Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited to be here and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. It's been a great conversation we've been having and getting to know each other here recently. And there's lots of I think value you can bring to our listeners and to our viewers of the podcast and the show based on your experience, based on what you've been able to do in your career and your life. A lot of interesting stories. We'll cover them from like bull riding to basketball to entrepreneurship and all these fun things. So let the world that doesn't already know about Jeff, tell them a little bit about you and your background.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's quite a diverse background, I guess. Started out, right from high school. I wasn't a big fan of school, and went on to start my education and didn't really have a clear direction where I was going, and kept quitting because I wanted to go rodeo. And so I'd go for a couple semesters, and then my brother would say, "Hey, you want to come to Texas and rodeo for the winter?" And, being in Southern Alberta, up in Canada, cold winter, rodeo in Texas, it was a pretty easy decision to head down with them. But, I finally decided I need to buckle down and get some education done. And so I did finish that. And my major was entrepreneurship. I always enjoyed being my own boss, or wanted to be my own boss. And so I graduated from that. And at the time I was working at a bank, and they came to me and asked me if I was interested in a full-time position now that I was graduated. And I actually told them no, because I was going to rodeo. And so I went throughout that summer. And then kind of at the end of the summer started thinking about it a little more, and had a wife with a kid on the way, and thought maybe I should really start looking at a real job a little bit, and went back to the bank. And I was fortunate enough that they still had the position for me. And so I got into the banking industry and, climbed the ladder there, ended up being a bank manager. In the meantime, I was also doing some real estate deals, had a mini storage business and stuff like that. And then one day I was sitting with one of my clients who was an entrepreneur that I had really looked up to. And he had a home building company, and we were sitting in his office, and he had a cultured stone catalog on his desk. And he says, we put a lot of this stone on our houses that we're building. And we got talking about that. And, the next week I was in the bank telling my boss that I was quitting because I was going to start a stone company.
Good for you.
So in 2005, I found someone that taught me how to get into the business of artificial stone veneer, manufacturing it. And I started a manufacturing company. We called it Kodiak Mountain Stone. And in 2006, we opened another factory in Utah. And you can imagine, being in the real estate industry, what we went through from 2006 to now. We've seen ups and downs of all sorts in both the US and in Canada. And still running that company, still the CEO of that company. And we've been through a lot of ups and downs. We've had to pivot a number of times. And then, I've a number of times talking with one of my business partners, our CFO, we had talked about all the lessons we've learned in starting this from a startup going through till today, and talking about the different things we've done that could benefit other entrepreneurs, other startups, and different stuff like that. And I've always talked about wanting to be a business coach. And I had the opportunity to work with different startups, work with different people on those sort of things. And then one day he called me and he said, I've got a client of mine that I'd like you to meet. And so I had the opportunity to meet him, and it was someone else that had been in the manufacturing industry related to real estate. And today is a very successful business coach. And we had an opportunity to sit down and talk about each other's experiences. And finally, he just says to me, "Why aren't you doing it?" And a lot of it, I think, is I felt I wasn't qualified. And, I did take some more courses, did a few things, but really was able to use a lot of the experience that I've gone through myself through the different ups and downs and messing up on things, that I stepped into being a business coach. And it's actually been an awesome thing. Now I'm doing both that and still running Kodiak Mountain Stone.
So you were entrepreneurial minded at some level to be able to, working in a bank. I used to do that, and working in a bank, is pretty dang corporate, and it's very political. It's very much who you know, and you can rise through the ranks if you align yourself with the right people, and build this image and this brand. But it's very corporate environment, at least from my experience. And so, that being said, you still had this side hustle, right, with the storage units. And so, where did that come from? I mean, you definitely, I want to touch a little bit on the background a little bit, but like it sounds like you kind of have this like rebel at heart inside, like someone who doesn't necessarily want to go with the status quo, or maybe wants to do things on their own terms. Is that where these entrepreneurial endeavors came from? Or was somebody in your family an entrepreneur? Like, where did all that come from that you could be a bank manager or a banker doing these other things?
Yeah, my mom worked at a dental office. My dad was a school teacher and a farmer. But as we grew up, on the farming side, he raised purebred Simmental cattle, and he would always help us kids that we would always have our own calf that we would raise and end up selling and stuff. So we got to understand the business side from that, the expenses of having this calf and raising it and selling it. And the nice thing was usually he covered all the expenses and we took the profit.
Nice.
So yeah, business was good. But with the entrepreneurial side, it was always something that I think a lot of it had to do with wanting to be my own boss, but also creating something. My dad also was able to introduce me to some things. There's a business development bank in our area that would give students, interest-free loans for a summer period to start a business. And so
Wow.
we were able to do some things like that. But there was also, when I got married, it was back in 96 when, a 3-year-old couldn't get on a computer and make a video. Back
Right.
then it was actually difficult. And so my wife, for our wedding, got a slideshow, the things we see all the time now, got one of these made, and actually it was is a blooper video of all my rodeo wrecks.
How crazy.
And when she did that, I just thought it was so cool. And so I actually went through and got someone to help me and figured out how to make these, and would take them from the computer, convert them to a VHS. And so I was doing that kind of as a little side hustle. And there's always different things like that. In Southern Alberta, Tabor corn is a very high thing. Like, Tabor corn is the best corn in the world type thing. And her grandpa owned a big corn farm, and it was called Mother Tanner's Corn. And so that was another thing, was during the harvest, I would go down in the mornings, get a load of corn in the back of my truck, bring it back to our town, and hire kids to sit there and sell corn, and different things like that, where I was always looking for opportunities to have my own little hustle. But then when it got to the banking industry, I did the things that you talked about. I had a good relationship with my boss. I was able to climb the ladder really quick. At the same time, there is a course being offered by Robert Allen and Mark Victor Hansen. And it was, I think, a lot of what I've done on the entrepreneurial side is because I had so much support from my wife, because, we're broke newlyweds, and, this course, they did a great sales job on the course, and I wanted it, and we didn't have $5,000 to go in it, but she's like, hey, go do it.
Wow.
And so
that's
we
huge.
figured it was, she was always supportive and stuff like that. Even when stepping forward, when I have a great bank job with great benefits, and I tell her I'm going to go build rocks, and she's like, good luck. But, that was while I was at the bank. I ended up, the course was actually awesome. Learned a lot from it, learned a lot in the real estate market. I ended up buying some duplexes that I held for a number of years, and then bought the mini storage and some other apartments. And it actually turned into a business that I loved, and really just continued to fuel the entrepreneurial spirit. But then in the banking side of it, one of the things that I really loved was I was in a smaller community. So when I was a bank manager, I was considered a full service bank manager, which meant I managed the bank, but I also did all the business loans, and
Business banking and
agriculture
all
loans.
that. Yeah.
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 And that was something that I absolutely loved, was sitting down with a business owner and going through his business and seeing what I could do to help, what he needed for financing, those sort of things. And really, it's a lot what I do right now as a business coach, is sitting down with someone, going through their business, looking at where they can make some changes and stuff. And it really was something that I love to do, is learning about all these businesses and how they're doing things, what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And so it was just always something. Even when I went to my boss and told him that I was going to be leaving the bank, he was incredible. I mean, he basically said, I knew you were going to do something like this at some point. Good luck. And if by any chance something goes sideways, you've always got a spot here at the bank. And so that made it that much easier, because I knew I had that security to fall back on.
Yeah, it's great having that support. You had it from a lot of the different angles. First and foremost, your wife on the home front, building a company, an organization, something new, creating something new. There's definitely risk involved, and there's uncertainty involved. And as much as entrepreneurs, we prepare for it, we usually look at the positive side. We look at the upside. We look at the growth potential. We look at the all the fun stuff. And it's like, doing it is really fun a lot of times. And it's like, not having that support from your significant other makes that process a lot harder. So it's good that you had that. And then also you had a really good relationship with a great person in your banking career that had your back, which was super important. And it's funny that you're sitting here talking about the times where you were branch manager, quasi business banker, because I lived that life too. And seeing people that were running businesses at all different levels, all different iterations, all different scales, it always called back to my entrepreneurial roots, where, I grew up, we talked about this, doing different entrepreneurial endeavors, much like yourself, but different ways. And every time I saw an entrepreneur, and I was in my banking role, which I was in for about 4 or 5 years, it always tugged on me to like get back to it. And so I would always take way more time probably than I should, like asking them questions, learning about their business, talking to them about like what's going on, and like really just kind of building my mindset to go back on my own again, and building my network of people that I could reach out to, whether they were going to be, vendors, they were going to be potential clients, they were going to be whatever it was. It was an amazing way to kind of brand myself and build myself through that career. I owe a lot to that career, as much as I look back on it now and I'm like, I can't believe I did that for 4 or 5 years versus what I do now. It completely changed the game. So I want to touch on, because you also talked about your dad setting an example with what he was doing with the cattle, and kind of like your mindset there. And so you kind of had this ongoing narrative of being an entrepreneur and wanting to do things on your own terms. What got you away from rodeo? And were you, and I don't know this, I'm a very novice when it comes to this. Was it horses? Was it bulls? Like, were you riding both? Like, what did that look like for you, and what made you get out of that lane?
So, growing up, we've talked about this before. Basketball was my life. And it was all through high school, and I've coached ever since high school. And it's a sport I love. But my older brother, was an incredible basketball player. And that's probably why I ended up loving it so much, is because, you always want to be like your big brother and follow in their footsteps. Well, he went to university, and while he was at university, he started to rodeo. We've got a lot of relatives that were in the rodeo scene, and we had a farm. We grew up on a farm around cattle, horses and stuff, but we didn't rodeo. But when he started doing it, I started getting interest in it. But he was riding bareback, and I didn't have a big interest in that. It looked scary.
And that, for the listeners, means like no saddle, nothing to sit on.
Yeah. There's just it's called rigging. You put your hand in it and you're out
Hope
there.
For the best.
Exactly. And so,
and are we talking bulls, or are we talking horses?
That was a horse.
A horse. Okay.
Horses. Yeah. And so at the same time, but he also started to calf rope. And we were at a rodeo watching him in Lethbridge, Alberta. And one of the things with the rig and how you hold on, if you fall off the wrong way, your hand doesn't come out.
Ooh.
And so he got bucked off, but he fell off the wrong way, and he got drug around that arena. With every jump that horse took, it was kicking him, and he got beat up bad. And he was hung up for, it was like a minute or something like that. And finally the horse was so tired, and people were jumping on the horse trying to slow it down. But yeah, he got beat up pretty bad, and he kind of got out of the rough stock events, and he was just calf roping and team roping and stuff like that. And I kind of started following in his footsteps, trying the calf roping. And then he got into steer wrestling. And so the steer wrestling is where, you come out on your horse, there's another guy on the horse on the other side to help the steer run straight, and you're jumping off the horse going full speed onto the steer's horns and wrestling it down to the ground.
Crazy.
And so he was doing that, and I was still in high school, and I was going to the high school rodeos, and I called him one weekend just said, "Hey, I need you to teach me how to steer wrestle." And he says, "Okay." He says, "Next time we go out and practice, I'll let you know, and you can come watch us and stuff." And I said, "Well, no, actually, I need you to teach me before weekend, because I entered a rodeo." So he did, and he was a good teacher, because I ended up second at that rodeo.
So walk us through, because most, if not all, of the listeners or viewers probably have never done that. And so jumping off of an animal that probably can go in excess of 30 miles an hour full speed, I'd imagine, on a horse.
Yeah.
And then onto something that can impale you if it has horns, right? It could hurt you. Yeah.
Yep.
What is the timing, the preparation? Like, that's really interesting to me. That's something that I really want to learn about for a second. So, like, what do you have to do to jump off of a horse to land on a steer? Like, the physical, everything, the timing, everything.
Yeah. So, and that's a lot of it is timing. And in this event, I was in high school at the time, so I obviously wasn't a real big guy, but this is usually the big man's event of the rodeo. But so basically what happens is you're on your horse in what we call the box, behind the steer in the chute, and you're on the left-hand side. The hazer is on the other side, which is the guy that keeps the steer running straight.
Kind of corrals them in a sense.
Yeah.
Like moves them. Yeah.
Yep. And so when you nod your head, they open the chute and let the steer out. Now, there's a device called a barrier that makes it so you have to give it a certain amount of head start. And so it gets the head start, and then, you're going full speed on your horse, 30, 35 miles an hour. And you're coming up on this steer, and you're sliding off the right side of your horse, holding onto the saddle horn. And when you get to the horns, you let go of the horse, and the horse keeps running, and your feet throw out in front of you, and you grab onto the steer's horns, and you bring it to a stop, and you twist it over onto its side.
Wow.
And so it is all timing, and it took me longer to explain that than usually what a run lasts. Like my quickest timing was 3.6 seconds or 3.4 seconds.
Okay.
So obviously that's a quick one, and my best, but you're looking anywhere from 3 to 6 seconds that this is all happening. So
when you leave the horse and bring the steer down to the ground?
No, it's from when the horse leaves past the chute.
Wow.
So it's that much time for you to catch the steer, get off, and throw them into the ground.
And the steer being a huge, just usually probably mountain of muscle and strength, I'd imagine, like, it's easy to take it down as just like 150 to 200 pound human being, like from the head, because you control the head, control the body kind of thing. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's technique. And you know what, like I talked about that video that my wife made for our wedding. It doesn't always go that way.
No, of course not.
So I've had steers that, everything's going perfect, and all of a sudden it kind of just picks me up and walks away with me. And so yeah, but it's mostly technique and stuff like that, and using the momentum of the speed and everything.
So a steer, is that the same? Like, in my mind, I'm going between two animals. Is that like a cow, like, or is it an actual bull, like a big, strong, muscular, like 1,000-pound, just brick shit house? Like, what does it look like?
Well, a steer is a bull without its man parts anymore.
Got it.
and they do that when they're younger, so they're not as big and muscly as a bull.
Not as much testosterone or wildness, exactly. But still a wild animal. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I can't even imagine. Like I have to go back and like take a look at some of these videos to get an idea of what you were doing. But
Yeah, I've got some videos. I'll send you a copy.
do it. Yeah, please do. If you got a Dropbox link or something, you could share a link. But so what was it? I'm sure there's probably not a lot of longevity in a career where it could end at any moment physically for you. What was it that got you away from that? Because it sounded like you were very passionate. Was it basketball was always the narrative? Like what got you away from wanting to do that?
I loved it. It was a lot of fun. I had great friends, got a close family within the rodeo community that I got to know, and I absolutely loved it. And yeah, there's definitely the factor that you can have injuries and stuff, and I had my share. Probably not the most dangerous of the events. Bull riding is still one that scares me more than anything.
Sure.
But it was, a lot of it was family. Because there are even my brother now, who's older than me, he still rodeos and he's very successful. He doesn't steer wrestle anymore. He team ropes.
Okay.
But it's a lifestyle that he's absolutely loved, and he's still doing very well in it. And I think he's done some awesome things in it. But for myself, it was kind of, well, when I decided to go back and get the job at the bank and started doing the rodeo more of a part-time thing, I was professional, and at the professional level, when you're trying to do it part-time, when other guys are doing it for a living,
can't keep up.
You don't make very much money.
Yeah.
And so that was probably when I made the realization that it was one or the other, that I had to really focus on my career or focus on that. And it was just a choice of that way.
Gotcha. Okay. And so kind of getting back to the business iterations. And so you get into the stone business for these homes and custom made places. And why that industry? Was it that one person that kind of led you into it, telling you about it? And then how did that business take off for you? Was it a slow burn? Was it a rocket? Like what was that transition like?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me that. How did you get into this? Were you a mason? Were you a home builder? How did you get into it? And it was none of the above. It just happened to be my buddy Dal had a catalog on his desk. And a lot of it was because it was a good fit for getting into a market he already had. And it was just an opportunity to be an entrepreneur. And, I remember, so I went down to Missouri and learned how to do it, how to do the manufacturing. And when I remember flying home, and we landed in Dallas, and I was sitting there kind of brainstorming, and I had it figured out. The first stones I was going to make, I knew the color I wanted to do, and I had it all figured out. And I remember thinking, this is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be.
Wow.
And I got home, and my whole plan was, I'm going to make this first stone, and I'm going to keep that forever. I'll keep that on my desk. And the first color I wanted to make, it was a brown color. I was copying a color from a competitor. I remember it was called Dakota Brown. And I just, like I said, I thought, this is a snap. And so we made that stone. And the next day when we come to pull it out of the molds, I'm all thinking, this is the stone that's going to sit on my desk. It's the first we ever made. And it literally came out and it was pink.
Not the color you were intending.
Not at all. And so, our first factory was actually a friend of mine that had lived outside the community we're at. We rented a big garage from him, and it was on a farm. And so that pink stone is still out in one of his fields somewhere, as far as I could throw it. So I never got to keep that first stone because I was too mad. But it ended up being a really steep learning curve. For sure. On the manufacturing side, and then on the sales side, everything. There was a lot to learn that kind of hit me unexpectedly. Yeah. But it was. There was some tough learning experiences, but there was, from the business standpoint of it, there's some really good learning experiences too. Practicality wise,
Thinking about, I'm on my fourth business now in my lifetime. And it's one that I'll have for many years. Very thankful for that. But you got to be practical. And as a business person, entrepreneur, cash is king, cash is oxygen, cash flow is oxygen. What was that beginning learning curve? How much did, not to get into details, but was it expensive? Did it cost you a lot of money to figure out, or were you able to kind of, make some money while you're learning? Like, how'd that process go?
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing was we were able to get to a point where we were making some colors that weren't pink, and
Gotcha.
we did that pretty quick. There's still, there's so many details that you don't realize. There's certain amount of air in the concrete to help you with your freeze thaw, so that when you go through the freeze thaw cycles, your stone isn't crumbling off the house. And there's
Gotcha.
all those little engineering things that we had to learn, but we were able to start selling product fairly quick.
Yep.
And so that did happen, and we did start having it. But one of the tough things was, because we got into a manufacturing company, manufacturing business, it was expensive. Just the setup alone, all the molds we had to have, all the equipment, everything is very capital intensive.
Sure.
Which knowing what I know now was a mistake, because what we were doing is we were competing against, the Owens Cornings of the world that had just finished doing a $16 million remodel on one of their factories.
Crazy. One of their factories. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that part was tough. And it really kind of had us look at things a little different, kind of trying to find a niche market or localized market and those sort of things. And we had to approach things differently.
Yep.
But that part was probably the toughest part. Was it was such a steep learning curve, and it was such a capital intensive business.
And was it you funding everything? Did you have any partners at the time, or?
We had investors.
Investors. Good. Okay. So there was capital injection outside of like just personal assets, personal spending, all that stuff.
Yeah, there was.
And so now you start this. When did you start that stone business? What year?
2005.
So you probably had a couple, 2 or 3 years as you're scaling, and then the bubble burst in the real estate industry.
Yeah. So we were, it was the scaling regionally in certain regions went really quick, but overall was slow.
Yeah.
It was hard to break into markets. And another hard thing was winter was tough, because you're going hard all summer, and then winter hits, and not a lot of stones going on in the winter months.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're still paying all your overhead and everything. So we were really trying to push into the US market, and that's what, opening up the factory in Utah helped. But we were doing quite well with it. We actually were working with a company that ended up being our biggest distributor, and we were selling stone online. And so all the stone that we were selling up and down the East Coast was sold online.
Okay.
And it was going really well. And then 2008 hit, and it was like, bam, it shut off. And so we really that was one of the times that we had to pivot with things and really change how we were looking at it.
Yeah, adapt, right? And learn how to survive in the lean times with a business that's cyclical until you figured a way around it, and just kind of that ever evolving, learning and growing and adapting. And then did you feel the full brunt of 2008, like a lot of businesses in general, but specifically in the real estate industry, where, a great economic indicator is, are homes being built? Are they being, remodeled? Are they, all these things? And that came to a grinding stop pretty quickly. Again, I was in banking not too long after this, so I saw a lot of the residual effects of that. How did you transition through that time? And was it a big hit, or did you kind of like work your way around it where you could still make money even in a down market?
No, it was a big hit. We started out doing what everyone did and trying to stay competitive. And the thing in our industry before then, the biggest focus was quality, not price.
Yep.
And immediately when this hit, quality wasn't even a focus anymore. It was what's the price?
Race to the bottom. Yep.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we were doing, is everyone was just dropping prices, and we started playing that game. We were trying to get jobs. And I remember there was a job in Salt Lake City that we were trying to bid on with one of our customers. And he came to us and just said, okay, this is what a competitor is bidding at it. And, what can you do for me so that I can be competitive? And it was a supply and install bid. And I said to him, I said, we can't even sell you the stone for that price. Like, they're basically working for free. And so what we ended up doing at that point is we went back to all our dealers and customers and just said, we're sorry about this. I know it's not what you want to hear, but we're putting our pricing back to where it was. If that means you have to leave us and go find another customer, we understand. And we did lose a lot of customers because of it, but we couldn't afford to keep dropping. And what we did at that time, the Canadian market wasn't hit as bad as the American market. And so we put all our focus back in Canada.
Nice. You could go back because you had one foot on each country, like each, Canada and the US, you can kind of go back and forth.
Yeah. And we had ended up, the other part was it was cheaper to manufacture in Utah and ship to Canada than it was to ship manufactured in Canada. So
how about that?
Time,
yeah,
we were doing all our manufacturing in Utah, but we were doing the majority of our sales in Canada. And the other part of the pivot at that time was we started to open our own stores. And so along with that, I didn't want to just have a store just with our product in it because, it wasn't really a diversified mix. And so we started selling, so we had our artificial stone. We had started selling the natural stone, brick, acrylic stucco. And then I actually went to some of our competitors that were kind of at different price points and was able to put deals together with them that we started selling their products as well. And
so smart. There's so much competition in every industry, but if you can learn how to utilize the strengths of your quote unquote competitors. I've done this years ago in my financial planning business. I've turned, I don't even consider people competition anymore on my end. And I don't mean that in like a braggadocious way, but like I've learned how to partner with people that we can make each other better. And there's so much abundance in the marketplace that you don't have to worry about the slice of pie that you're not going to get. And if you can be smart enough about it and realize bigger than your own ego is really what it came down to. And like bringing these competitors into your business actually helped you and them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in the beginning, it was kind of like, all right, you're one of our competitors. What are you trying to pull here?
Yeah. They weren't used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But over time, once they realized that we were being straight up and we basically just wanted to have their product as something to offer as well, it's turned into some pretty good relationships.
Isn't that incredible? The old adage or the old philosophy of you can go to a point faster alone, but you go further together.
Yeah,
it's really what it comes down to. And even in the same industry and competitors, and it's a great pivot in humility and probably based in reality and practicality, like having to get this done to make things happen. And so now, running this business, for well over 10 years, at what point did you decide to pivot or like, obviously you're still running this business, but like, when did you decide to add the coaching to this, to what your entrepreneurial efforts are?
So to really, one of the things that started leading into that was we had an opportunity for a number of years in a row that the same business partner that gave me the idea to start the stone company, he started a business conference, an entrepreneurial business conference in Hawaii over at BYU Hawaii. And so we'd go over to that every year, but we also had the opportunity while we were there to work with students on their business plan competition. And so that coaching and staying in touch with them and watching them take these and actually turn them into businesses was another cool part. But it was probably a couple of years ago when my other partner, Dave, talked to me about one of his clients and made that introduction. And that's when I started getting a little more serious about it. As I said, I took some other courses and stuff, and just probably more and more in the last year, getting more and more serious about doing the coaching.
Nice. And so who are the people that you enjoy working with or coaching for? Like who are the type of people that are, able to connect with you? Is it entrepreneurs? Is it, businesses themselves, and working with like the executives, the C-level in there? Like, who do you work with?
Yeah, I had lunch with another coach last week, and we were talking about this, how everyone tells you you need to really niche down and, get really specific. And I haven't. I like working with entrepreneurs. I do like working with startups. I love that part of it, but I don't have a specific entrepreneur that I look for, um, because I look at who I do work with, and it's quite a broad variety of different people.
Yeah.
And I do, I have one guy that I work with that doesn't own his own business. He's in sales, and I still love working with him, working on the things that he's focused on and his accountability and stuff. But it's quite a broad spectrum of entrepreneurs that I do have the opportunity to work with.
Nice. And what are some of the things that you're able to coach them on or through, any common narratives or themes that you're finding, and where are you able to add value?
Probably where things have been really leaning towards over the last while is on their marketing. I've had a lot of customers that, and it's, with small businesses, it's a common theme, is they need more leads, they need to create more sales, and they don't have the money to put into sales and marketing.
Yep.
And so that's really been somewhere that I've really been able to kind of excel, was helping people find those ways to really increase their leads without spending a bunch or any additional money in the sales and marketing area, and just looking for the opportunities that they're and a lot of times it's stuff that they know and they're just not recognizing that they need to make some changes. And it's really a beneficial thing that you can really help them increase those leads and work through them on the different areas.
I feel like people have access to the knowledge, the information, and that's one thing, is having the information. But then the next thing is the execution and the discipline, and just getting things done. And the value of a coach, a leader, and a mentor that's accomplished things or done things that you're looking to accomplish, and they can take that insight. It fast forwards the whole process. You can get them better information quicker. You can teach from experience how you've done things. And so, with coaching and mentoring, there has to be buy-in. There has to be a belief from, the mentee, so to speak, and their belief in you and what you can do. And so I've seen the value of coaching and mentoring and leading, but myself personally, but to kind of get back to it, and without, giving away any like proprietary information if you don't want to or need to, or giving away the farm, so to speak, because I want people to contact you that want to connect with you in that aspect of coaching. What are some little things people that are listening to this can kind of maybe make a tweak or an adjustment in their marketing, their business? Like if they're looking to find an additional sale, like what's something they can focus on if they don't have the money or the bandwidth, but they do need additional sales? Like what's a small little hack they could put into place?
I think one of the things that probably 90+ % of the people I work with is, everyone has a website, but really, is it working for you? Is it something that you can really utilize, or is it basically somewhere someone can go and get your phone number or email or something like that? Are you, because you think of anytime you're buying something, really, there's a real broad variety of people that can be looking at your website, but how many of them right now are now buyers that are going to be buying right now? And out of all the other ones that aren't ready to buy right now, how are you staying with these people so that when they become the now buyers, that you're going to be there for them? And that's usually, figuring that out and figuring out what you can do with your website to keep them within your sphere of influence is where you can really excel. And that's probably the number one thing that I end up working with my clients on right from the beginning, is figuring that out.
Getting that engagement, that brand loyalty, maybe even doing some follow-up through like some, if you have a podcast or email sequences or a blog, just something that endears people to you and the mission, and then takes those, because you have those, like you said, the people that are ready to buy, they'll make that decision, determination right away. But then you have people that are on, a pause for whatever reason, but you want to keep them engaged at some level.
Yeah. And so usually it's offering them information, information product or something. And then, like you say, an email sequence, creating a drip campaign that you can keep offering them that information, so that when they do become a now buyer, well, they're going to come to you because you're the one that's been feeding them all this great information that has been free and helpful all the way along.
Adding value. Gary Vee talks about it all the time in one of his books called Jab, 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 Right Hook, where you add value, add value, add value, and then eventually you have an ask, because not that you've earned their business, but you've earned the right to at least pose, hey, what do you think about this? So let's do business here. And I've seen this time and time again. If you completely have a servant leader's heart, where you add value and you're not afraid to share the wealth, so to speak, people buy into that, because you're dealing with people. Like, yes, it's a business. Yes, people are buying from a company, but they're really, they have some sort of relationship in their mind with you or with your company that they believe in. And I think that's super important for people to recognize. Is it all comes down to people. It all comes down to how you make people feel. And the soft sciences behind the hard sciences are super important. So that being said, so what are some of the things that you're focusing on now with the coaching or the stone business? Are you looking to, move those ahead, keep scaling? Are you kind of happy where they are? Like what's the next few months to the rest of this year look like for you?
Yeah, I've actually got a number of things I'm working on right now with the stone business, with Kodiak Mountain Stone. We're just looking at building up some new things here in the Phoenix market. Nice. And then on the coaching side, I've developed some new programs that I'm working with some clients on, that I'm really excited about. And I've incorporated some online courses and things to include with the coaching. I've got a program I call my e-learning marketing system that is a 52-week program that my one-on-one coaching clients go through it, but it's also for the ones that don't want to do the one-on-one. It's a great program that starts right from the beginning of, what's your market dominating position, to 52 weeks down the road. It's a lot more into some in-depth marketing strategies and stuff like that.
Very nice.
And so working with those, and one thing that I've been really excited about the last while is we've started an inner circle mastermind, and it just seems to be getting better and better every week, and people are getting more engaged in it, and it's been a lot of fun. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Keep touching lives, keep helping people, reach their goals. Super fulfilling if that's, your business. And it sounds like you're doing those things. So as far as people reaching out to you and connecting with you, is there a website, social media, all the above? How can they find Jeff Heggie and all that you're doing to help the world?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. On Instagram, it's Entrepreneur Next Door. So entrepreneur.next.door. On Facebook, it's Jeff Heggie Biz, B-I-Z. And then LinkedIn, it's just under Jeff Heggie, JEFFHEGGIE. On my website, jeffheggie.com, if you go there and just in the search bar, put Jesse T, or even just Jesse, I've actually put a post in there that will have a link to all my different things, my coaching programs, the e-learning marketing system, all those different things. And so, yeah, JEFFHEGGIE.com. Love to have people check that out, and that's where they can find me.
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll put all your links and all your contact information all over the YouTube channel and then the podcast as well. And so thank you so much for your time and connecting. And, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and hear your story. And I know you're doing a lot of good things in the world. I'm excited to continue our friendship and, see what we can do to leave the world a better place. He is the great, mighty, and powerful Jeff Heggie. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of The Jesse T Show.